A plane crash in western Georgia. The plane breaks apart on impact, but incredibly, most on board survive. Saddam Hussein blinks as hundreds of U.S. Marines and sailors head for the Persian Gulf in a show of force. And Eye on America. Tonight, the 100-somethings and their secrets of living more than a century.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. Dan is off tonight. I'm John Roberts. A twin-engine commuter plane headed from Atlanta to Gulfport, Mississippi crashed today in western Georgia. At least 2 people were killed, but many others survived. Hard to believe when you see what's left of the plane. Correspondent Bob Orr has the story and the pictures.
26 passengers and 3 crew members were aboard Atlantic Southeast Airlines Flight 529 bound for Gulfport, Mississippi, when it crashed 5 miles outside of Carrollton, Georgia. The Brazilian-made Embraer 120 plane broke into 2 large pieces, and witnesses reported seeing passengers fleeing the crash, some on fire. The injured passengers, some badly burned, were medevaced to nearby hospitals.
They had bad burns, cuts, you know, everything, anything you can imagine.
We broke through the fuselage. We ended up taking the co-pilot out from the rear of the plane.
Just minutes after taking off from here in Atlanta, the pilots of the plane radioed air traffic controllers they were having engine problems. The FAA says the crew tried to make an emergency landing at the regional airport about 40 miles west of here when radar contact with the plane was lost. Atlantic Southeast is a small regional airline based in Atlanta. 4 years ago, one of its planes, also an Embraer 120, crashed in Brunswick, Georgia, killing Senator John Tower and 22 others. The cause of that crash was a problem with the left engine. Today's is the 3rd fatal crash of a commuter or regional plane in the past year. Last December, an American Eagle flight went down in North Carolina, killing 15, just weeks after another American Eagle flight crashed in Indiana, killing all 68 aboard. Today's accident comes as the FAA is phasing in tougher safety standards for commuter planes, and federal inspectors are now on their way to Georgia to try to find out exactly what caused this latest crash. Bob Orr, CBS News, Atlanta.
The U.S. diplomatic community has been shaken by tragedy, a weekend accident that took the lives of 3 American envoys in Bosnia. The bodies were returned to Washington today. Robert Frazier, Joseph Krusel, and Samuel Nelson Drew were killed when their car went off a mountain road near Sarajevo. Secretary of State Warren Christopher said it will not stop the United States initiative for peace in the Balkans.
The loss of Bob and Joe and Nelson is a terrible blow, but the effort to bring peace to Bosnia will continue, and with a renewed sense of commitment. We will honor their sacrifice by striving to complete their work.
President Clinton will interrupt his vacation to attend a memorial service Wednesday for the 3 men at Arlington National Cemetery. UN officials say Saddam Hussein has dropped his confrontational stance and is cooperating with UN arms inspectors. He's also moved Iraqi troops away from the border with Kuwait. All this follows the defection of several top Iraqi officials to Jordan and some saber rattling by the United States. Correspondent David Martin has the latest on that.
The troops were ready to go, but the planes that were supposed to carry them to Kuwait have been backed up from Germany all the way to Fort Hood, Texas.
Well, originally we had plans today for this aircraft to depart at about 8:20, another one at about 12:50, and another around 5 p.m. And now all of these have just kind of gotten backed up.
The backup was the result of a delay in getting overflight rights from Egypt and Saudi Arabia. America's 2 most important Arab allies don't share the Clinton administration's sense of urgency in rushing troops to Kuwait. U.S. intelligence had been watching the Iraqi army conduct mobilization exercises in what could have been preparation for a move south against Kuwait. Then Saddam Hussein's son-in-law, Hussein Kamel, defected to Jordan, claiming the Iraqi dictator was indeed preparing to invade Kuwait again.
But that would be a great tragedy, and be particularly a great tragedy for the Iraqi military.
With U.S. Marines already conducting exercises in Jordan, much of the Iraqi military activity has now ended. And experts say Hussein Kamel, who fled Iraq after losing out in a power struggle, should not be taken at his word.
He wants to pull some levers that would trigger a coup. And by telling them that Saddam was planning to send them into Kuwait and Saudi Arabia again, he certainly accomplishes that purpose.
Hussein Kamel was the architect of Iraq's weapons programs, and now that he has defected, Saddam has suddenly revealed to the UN at least part of the truth about his biological weapons program.
The Iraqi authorities handed over a large amount of information which Iraq earlier has been systematically concealing for us.
Saddam desperately needs to get the economic sanctions against Iraq lifted, but that is not likely to happen anytime soon. He'll no doubt get a chuckle out of the backup in the U.S. deployment to Kuwait, but these days that's about all he's got to smile about. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Once again, the Middle East peace process has been interrupted by a deadly explosion. 5 people, including an American tourist, were killed by a bomb in Jerusalem. The American was identified as Joan DeVenny of Woodbridge, Connecticut. Correspondent Bob Simon has more from the scene.
Rush hour, a bus, Jerusalem, the perfect where and when for a suicide bomber. Within minutes, all the extraordinary things which happen after an explosion, the extraordinary things which have become routine in this country, were happening all around. Sirens and soldiers and angry crowds and riot police and rabbis, the grim reapers of body parts strewn all over the street. One woman was still sitting in her seat in the bus. Another death was barely disguised by an orange blanket. Police told people to leave, but people weren't leaving. They were venting their rage.
We are in a situation that just one word I know, helpless, helpless.
In Damascus, Hamas, the Islamic fundamentalist group opposed to the peace process, took responsibility for the attack. In Gaza, PLO Chairman Arafat condemned it. And in Jerusalem, Israel's foreign minister insisted peace talks will go on.
We shall not submit to the terror that kills or to the terror that is trying to finish or to stop the peace process.
The leaders all say they want the peace process to continue, but they've suspended negotiations at least until after the dead are buried. Even then, they'll have a hard time now selling any deal to Israelis, who are far from convinced that any Palestinians really want peace. By evening, the aftershocks of the blast were being felt all over town. The funeral of a 26-year-old student and demonstrations, many angry demonstrations. All this after the charred skeleton of bus number 26 was towed away, a grotesque monument to a war which, despite negotiations, agreements, and White House ceremonies, is still far from over. Bob Simon, CBS News, Jerusalem.
O.J. Simpson's lawyers get a scolding from the judge. That story is coming up next. And later, they may have won the latest battle, but the war over women at the Citadel is far from over.